Today on Biz in 30 Sales Call, we have back with us one of our most popular guests, Mike Shepard. Mike is a top Nutrafol sales representative with over 30 years experience. Today, Mike's going to offer some great advice and tips on the lifeblood of sales success, prospecting for new business. We're going to discuss the amount of time you should spend prospecting, his strategy for finding and qualifying high-value prospects, the research needed on high-value prospects prior to making a call on them, what Mike's strategy is for selling that first appointment, and Shep's pre-call preparation for a successful first appointment with high-value prospects. Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm glad first episode went well enough that you extended the invitation back for number 2.
Glad to have you. Mike, you have always been a top producing sales rep, but how much do you still prospect?
Prospecting never goes away. I do spend quite a bit of time with my existing customers, but in order to keep new revenue goals in mind and new account revenue and number of new accounts, I am prospecting quite a bit. And I would say it's not a majority of my time, but it's always around the 40 to 50% of my time mark.
Just for our listeners, what do you think the percent of time should top reps spend on prospecting versus maybe a new or underperforming rep?
It really depends on the maturity of the territory. As I've seen different companies where it has a more mature territory, where there's more existing revenue, there's going to be more time spent in existing accounts. And then for somebody that's taking on maybe an expansion territory or a split territory, there's going to be more and more time prospecting to catch up to that revenue. Interesting enough, I had a pretty mature territory for the last 2.5 years where I'm at now with Nutrafol, and they just expanded and split my territory in half. So I'm now in a growth phase again and doing more and more prospecting.
Mike, we know you primarily call in dermatologists. Please share your strategy for finding quality, high-value prospective customers.
So specifically within dermatology, there's a way to segment out those dermatologists, and I'm sure it's the same with all businesses. But for example, a dermatologist may or may not offer retail products, and our product is a retail offering. So if somebody does not do any retail, I can eliminate them as a prospect. And then for those that are retailing, there's going to be a variety between those that are just offering it as a small extension of their practice, all the way to those that have what we would call a product specialist. And that product specialist runs all the retail, whether it's skincare or whether it's nutraceutical and supplements. Those are going to be my primary targets within dermatology.
So let me ask you a question. When I was in business, I would say that 75% of my business came from referrals. Okay. And even over 30 years, I can say that's a pretty sound number. But what role do referrals play in finding high value prospective customers in your business?
Referrals are huge. If I have a physician to physician referral, if I have somebody in a practice that may have left the practice and can refer me back to the practice that they went to or the practice that they're going, that's going to be huge. And then as important as a referral is if they know of somebody in another practice that's similar to theirs, that is a validation. Where if I can I have a similar practice to yours that is doing really, really well. So it can be all aspects of referral. And one of the most important things for me is asking for that referral. Sometimes I get so caught up in the business at hand that I don't ask a good customer if there's somebody that they would recommend I speak with. It's not always in my territory. It could be in somebody else's territory.
So let me just jump off here for a second. And what about a business owner who, say, owns a landscape business, okay? Who would they ask for referrals in that business? Suppose they're in residential landscape. Where in your imagination would they go to ask for referral?
Well, I think the natural is any customer of theirs has a network of people that they're friends with. And it could be, I'll use us as a really good example. Is my wife was president of the Parents Club locally. and we were involved with the youth sports locally. And we have a good network of friends. And perfect example, this isn't landscaping, but it's housekeeping. A housekeeper that we have come in twice a month now also has her client list includes 4 of our friends. And we had a friend just have an issue where they had to let their housekeeper of 20 years go. And I immediately say, I got somebody great for you. So I think that extending for referral, we all know pain points that people are having. And if they're looking for a landscaper, if they're looking for somebody with a pool, if they're looking for solar, whatever it may be, as a homeowner, I have a referral network for you.
That's good. So for our audience, which is primarily business owners who sell and sales professionals and account managers, please tell us what type of research that you conduct before you contact that prospective high value customer.
Jim, it's amazing what we have with our phone now and our laptop and being able to get onto Wi-Fi. When I first started way back in the 90s, yeah, we had the internet to do our research, but once I left the house, it was over. Whatever I had printed out, written down, printed on a map, that was my go forward for the day, and maybe a phone book, grabbing the phone book out of the hotel. But once I was out of the house, I was really limited. I was making calls yesterday and I saw 3 existing accounts and I wanted to do some prospecting. So I pull up on Google Maps and I type in dermatology and I see a dermatology practice. And then there's a couple other types of practices that I call on now and I pull them up. And so I see where they're at. I can map them very quickly. And then I also have the ability to go to their website and see what services they're offering that match up to what I'm doing. So I do all that research before going into the practice, but I don't assume everything on the website is accurate. So I'm still going in when I go in the practice. I may say, I see you do this, but I ask them more questions than what was just on the website.
Mike, how do you sell getting that initial appointment? Can you kind of walk us through what that first phone call or contact looks like?
I don't expect anybody to buy on the initial call. And I know there's stats and studies that show it takes 6 to 7 calls. I think the only time somebody truly is going to buy on a first call is if they're an inbound lead. They already know the product. They used it somewhere else at another practice. They're coming in. They've already made up their mind. That's a 1-call close. If I'm intruding and invading somebody's business, I'm just hoping to get the correct contact, who the introduction person would be, maybe a direct number or an email to start that process. So I am very realistic when I'm going into that practice of the initial contact. And my goal is to set up that follow-up and or potentially if they have FaceTime right then, I will see them. I'd never say no to seeing somebody right away and scheduling a meeting, especially if I've already predetermined they are a good prospect.
Very good. Mike, what role does each of the following play in a good prospecting system? We're talking an email, a phone call, or a text. And what advice would you offer to others on what's the best way?
It's interesting, Jim. I think it depends on the person. So I emailed somebody on Sunday and said, I'm going to be in your area Monday and Tuesday. And they said, I want to see you. Send me a text. So I know right there that that particular prospect wants to have text communication. That's the best way that they respond. I'm not leery of calling people's cell phones, but I respect their privacy and catching them at the right time. So a lot of times if I have a cell phone, I will text them first to give them a heads up that I'm looking for them, want to talk to them. Email, I assume it goes to spam or junk. So if I'm sending an email with introduction information, I have to place a phone call to the practice after that. Same thing with Instagram and DMs. A lot of that goes into if I'm not connected with them, it's going to go into a separate folder. So I think doing all those things to send introduction information is 5 to 10% effective. I think calling and showing up are much more effective.
Very good. What advice can you offer to others on the best way to peak some interest for the prospect on that initial contact?
Well, if you've really data mined well and you know where there's synergies, I think you can lean on what you've done with other similar accounts in the past and that they're a good fit or a good match for what you're doing. And in my world right now with a supplement, there's 3 or 4 areas. If they're doing something already, we're going to be a good and natural fit. And I've found that in the past with other devices and other equipment that it will match up to a surface that they already offer. And then I go back to, there's different acronyms for this, but do you have a good product? Does it work well? Is it safe and effective? And most importantly, on the business owner, is there upside for them where they're going to either make money or have happy patients or have happy customers and save time? So whatever your value proposition is, you want to mention that early on.
Good. So this is all part of the preparation of getting into the first appointment. What kind of preparation does a top sales rep do for that first appointment with a high value prospect?
Well, going in with a really good attitude always helps, being positive. I think treating everybody in the practice like they're part of the decision-making process is huge. And I will do that normally in any way because I've walked into practices where there's two people at the front desk and one is the owner. And so I'm not going in, I'm not assuming anybody is the final decision maker or isn't a decision maker. I'm going in expecting everybody. I do look at pictures at websites, so I have an idea of who's who in a practice when I walk in.
Good advice.
And as far as that preparation goes, I think if you're in a parking lot and you have 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes to look at a website, it is absolutely worth taking that time to have a little preparation before going in. Even if it's to show where they're from or what school. And there may be, in my case, a dermatologist that they went to school with that's a customer of mine. So doing just a little bit of preparation before going into the call is a main factor.
That's tremendous advice to our audience to help them improve their prospecting for high value prospective customer targets. I want to thank you very much for your time today, Mike. And I'm sure our audience truly finds value in your advice. I know they did last time. Jim and I both were very pleased with the comments we got on the value they found out of your episode the first time. But we would like to invite you back, Mike, if you would consent to discuss preparing and presenting sales presentations. That came into mind when you were talking about making 3 presentations today. And I wish you good luck with that. And I know Jim does too. Would you have time to come back and talk about that?
Absolutely, Jim. Anytime that you would like to have me back, I'm more than happy to it. I am in Hawaii this week. I normally don't tell people that I have Hawaii as part of my territory because like you, all they think is Mai Tais and surf and sand. But believe it or not, I come over here and work very hard in order to justify my expense report.
We want to thank our audience, our rapidly growing audience. We thank you very much for your time today. And we really look forward to seeing you soon. Until then,
Sell on.